I just want to say something quickly before I even speak on the Wolves game, because you know what it is. Chelsea Football Club are the biggest embarrassment in modern football in the last 30 years. Spent 1 billion, end up in 10th place. Absolutely by far the biggest embarrassment in modern football as things stand. You can sit up here and you can laugh about Arsenal bottling a league, or Liverpool bottling a league, or City bottling the Champions League all these years, Man United spending money and not winning stuff, blah, blah, blah. But Chelsea Football Club, what they are doing currently as things stand, spending 1 billion essentially in a year and a half, 2 years, and ending up in the position that they're in right here, right now, 10th place, not getting as much criticism as any of the top 3 clubs would have gotten by the media is insane. And the reality is, if my club was 10th after spending 1 billion, Terry would have my head on a stick every single week. You know, if it was Arsenal, then the Arsenal fans would get cooked. If it was United, then Terry, you know, would get a headache from the amount of shit he had to take on the channel. So the fact that Chelsea Football Club spent 1 billion, but we baby them. We sit up here and go like, oh, Chelsea have signed 20 youngsters. You know, I want to call out a fraud. Footy Judge Mo, massive fraud. He convinced us all 2 months ago that Chelsea are on a better trajectory than Man United. And we all bought it because we all saw the youngsters, the potential, the blah, blah, blah. And now I'm thinking about it. So Chelsea's plan is essentially, let's win the league 3 years from now. Chelsea's plan is let's win the league. What a double-digit league titles for you. Chelsea's plan is let's win.
Big up Lewis, by the way. Big up yourself, brother. Hope you're well, mate.
Big up Lewis. Chelsea's plan is essentially let's win the league 3-4 years from now. I'm looking at this Chelsea squad and I'm questioning, okay, let me be objective here. No agendas. Who out of this current crop of Chelsea players is going to survive 3 years from now? Let's assume in a hypothetical world, 3 years from now, Chelsea are lifting the Premier League title. Which of the current players we're currently watching will be part of that team? Who? Caicedo, Enzo, you could say Leslie, maybe an Nkunku, Badiashile, I think is a good defender. Other than that, the rest all have a lot to prove. The rest have all let Chelsea play down multiple times. And this is actually a thing I always tell Chelsea fans that I keep telling me, oh, poch out, poch out, poch out. I feel like they just don't understand. Me and Terry, everything I said about Chelsea this summer has come into fruition. That's the one club I've been 100% spot on last summer. I told you this is the worst fan base, the absolute worst fan base to require this patient shit from. Chelsea fans now want Jose Mourinho. Like Jose Mourinho is going to work with these 13-year-olds. Like he ain't going to work with them. The average age of your squad is about 15 years old. You think Jose Mourinho is going to come up here and do it? He can't do this. Jose Mourinho would buy 3-4 32-year-olds as soon as he steps foot into Chelsea, given the current context of the squad. So I think 5-6 years from now, 3, 4, 5 years from now, the players that you're watching right now for Chelsea, I'd say generously, maybe 6 or 7 would be you know, there in the team that quote unquote wins the league hypothetically. And you know who's to blame? It's not Pochettino. It's not even the players. It's Todd Bowley. Because respectfully, I'm saying this respectfully. I know some people always mock Americans. Staffy sometimes gets some of it. I'm not mocking Americans. I'm mocking the American ownership method being applied in Premier League football because it doesn't work. Because the two sports are completely different. There is no draft. There is no trade. All the things are different in this league. You have to buy. You have to become better. You have to hire the right people. I look at Todd Bowley, and Todd Bowley essentially said, let me skip the process and just go straight up directly to the next step and just try win stuff, which doesn't happen in football. So, you know, people have mocked Liverpool for the whole Caicedo thing all summer long. Caicedo cannot sleep for the last 3 months. Every night he cannot sleep. He's punching his pillow every night, going like, I should have went to Liverpool, as I said all summer long. So yeah, that's and Wolves are winning. Wolves are winning, mark my words.
When you say you can't blame Poch, what about playing Levi Colwill as a left back? What about continuing to play Enzo in this number 10 role as an example? He's consistently played players out of position on a regular basis, which doesn't help them, doesn't help with cohesion. Surely that element isn't down to Todd Bowley. Surely that is, and not even the players and experience. Surely that is a managerial and coaching issue from Poch.
Listen, Poch is not flawless. Poch has made mistakes. I admit that. Even watching the Chelsea game as an example, just the last Chelsea game that we watched against Newcastle, you know, just as a quick example, he played Disassi right back as an example, unnecessarily. You know, you have what's his name? You've got bro, who's the guy? Colwell, you just mentioned, playing left back, you know?
Yeah.
My thing is, like, with the stuff not working at Chelsea fans would have asked for him to try change stuff. He has tried change stuff. I think when you look at Chelsea statistically, creatively, very good, creating so many chances, you know, on the ball, very good, in possession, very good, a very good pressing team. Their major problem is putting the ball in the back of the net, and in some games keeping clean sheet because they lose their heads. Now, the way you get that is you get experienced players. Now, people might mock the idea, but hear me out. Chelsea need a James Milner in this team. They need 3-4 James Milners. They need players who aren't necessarily the best players on the pitch, who aren't necessarily amazing, players who are just generalists, who just do everything okay level, who could help guide these youngsters to the finish line in said games, in said seasons, and actually just help get them there. Because I think Pochettino, if you give him the choice this January window, as much as Pochettino likes to develop players and stuff, I think if you give him right now, would you rather sign another 3 20-year-olds or 3 30-year-olds? He's choosing the 3 30-year-olds. That's the thing. So I'm looking at Chelsea right now. As much as Poch is to blame for mistakes, and I know the people who are Poch out, like Lewis in the chat, because he is Poch out. I will give you a list of mistakes Poch has done. Oh, playing Cucurella right back and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but when it worked, Poch was a genius. When Cucurella went right back and it worked. So, look, Poch is to blame for certain things, but Pep Guardiola would not succeed with Chelsea. Jurgen Klopp would not succeed with Chelsea as things stand. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
Another question on Chelsea for you.
Yes.
During conversations on the terrace in the last week, of course, the young players are being defended. They're young, they're inexperienced. Is there a case, in your opinion, that maybe the likes of Caicedo, maybe the likes of Enzo are just not as good as everybody thought they were? Do you think there's a possibility that maybe, just maybe, they're not worth this £100 million that was spent on them? Or is this a case of they bought too many kids at once? Because there's a lot of differential opinions on that. I'd love to hear your take on it.
I think with your club is involved in this. Chelsea and Man United have ruined the transfer market in the Premier League last 5-6 years with the amount of idiotic decisions that they've made. And I'm sorry to drag your club into this, but your club is involved. You know, like, as an example, if someone wants to buy Ivan Toney this January, Brentford are going to go like, wait a minute, Højlund just went for 72 million. It's all started with the Pogba Neymar transfer window.
You spent 70 million on noodles, bruv.
Yes, but Darwin Núñez was the top goal scorer of the Portuguese league. We're talking before he came, not how he's playing now.
Right, okay.
That's what we're talking
The Liverpool,
about.
no accountability, just Man United and Chelsea.
There you are. There. So do you buy a player based on how he's playing for your club or the previous club? The previous club. He was the top goal scorer.
I'm just ascertaining. So it's only Man United and Chelsea who have bought overpaid for players. Only us.
No, not only. Volume. Consistently overpaying for players. No, I'm not talking about only. Man City, Liverpool, every club, Arsenal have overpaid for players. Havertz, they've overpaid for him. It's not a difficult example to give.
That must be Man United's fault, though. Yeah, we did that.
No, it's Man United and Chelsea's fault for doing in the market. Anyway, Enzo and Caicedo, and the players that they bought for the hundreds of millions of British pounds. You see why personal accountability matters for certain players. Caicedo isn't worth that much. Enzo isn't worth that much. The reason why Chelsea paid that much for him, we all know this, is because Real Madrid, Barcelona, the bigger clubs were coming in for him in the summer. So they had to get him in January quickly. Only way to secure him in January, release clause, 100 million, player wants to leave. Okay, let's do this. So I'm looking at the transfers right now. Caicedo has not really been playing well this season. Enzo is like hit and miss. Sometimes he does some good stuff on the pitch. You're like, okay, at least I see the potential there. Mudryk, almost 100 million done. Fuck all. That game away at Old Trafford, if that's not the perfect indicator that the guy has no brains, essentially, to play the sport, then I don't know what the indicator is. Enzo, for me, and Caicedo, despite them underperforming this season, I think 3 years from now, if Chelsea were to win the Premier League, they will be a part of said team. They will be a part of the Chelsea team that wins the English Premier League. I don't think Mudryk will be a part of the winning team. I don't think, certain players like Nicholas Jackson, like others, would be a part of the winning team. Maybe Disasi, not necessarily. They clearly need a goalkeeper. They clearly need a striker. Enzo Fernandez, for me, has gotten like, and this is where I will defend him a little bit. Enzo Fernandez has gotten a little bit extra criticism this season. Every time we watch Chelsea, it's kind of people just kind of pile on Enzo, even though it's not always Enzo's fault. Despite him playing like shit sometimes and getting over defended, because you know what it is in football conversations. This is what happens in football conversations. Because Chelsea fans pull so much the other way, nothing is ever Enzo's fault. It's not his accountability. He's our best player on the pitch. He's unbelievable. He's insane. He's great. He's better than Declan Rice. Now everyone has to pull in the other way. The truth is in the middle. The truth is Enzo Fernandez had some good games this season, has some shit games this season. Caicedo, in my opinion, has been worse than Enzo this season. Honest opinion, I think he's been worse than Enzo this season. I think he's actually had a very bad start to the season for his time. And this is where it comes back to the previous segment, where I always ask people, do you want me to treat Chelsea like a big club, or do you want me to treat Chelsea like an Aston Villa or like a West Ham or like a Bournemouth? Because if I'm holding Chelsea to a standard, and by the way, the word standard has now become a buzzword, which I will speak about when we get to further conversations. But if I'm holding Chelsea to a standard of a big club, then I've got to hold the £100 million signings accountable. Same way you guys roast Nunez every week. Same way we roast Højlund every week. Same way we roast any 60 million, 70 million, 80 million, 90 million pound players who are playing like shit. When you get signed for that much money, you better be a Virgil van Dijk. You better be a Declan Rice. You better be an Alisson Becker. You better be an Erling Haaland. You better be a Ruben Diaz. You better be a Rodri. Players who perform. That's how you get. Because let me ask you a question. When the last time someone mentioned Declan Rice's price tag? It's only 5 million less than Caicedo.
No, I totally agree. I think the problem with Chelsea is this. I do think Caicedo and Enzo are as good as the hype suggested. I do think they have that ability. The problem they have is they've gone into a dysfunctional club that's trying to fix itself with too many young players at the beginning of a project. If you put Haaland at Man United right now, he'd be struggling similarly to Højlund because the chances are not being created for him. The abundance of clear-cut chances is not being created for him. I still think he'd score more than Rasmus Højlund because he's a better finisher, but he'd be nowhere near the level of goals he's scored in the last 18 months in England, as an example. Right now, funnily enough, at Chelsea, they actually could do with a really good goal scorer. But when you have youngsters who are your stars, your youngsters who are your spine, youngsters who are meant to carry you forward, it's a very hard task. Now, Trent Alexander-Arnold was able to thrive because there was so much quality around him. And a lot of it was older than he was. If Trent would have come in at 18, it would have been like, you're here to save us, mate. It's crazy. It's why I say to Man United fans, support Mainu. Back Mainu. But don't start pinning our hopes that he is the savior of the club. He's 18. He shouldn't be saving anything. We should be helping him develop. And I think that's the problem Chelsea have got. These young players are being hung out to dry. If they don't address it quickly, they'll ruin these players. And someone said it earlier that Man United have got a habit of overpaying for average players. We don't. That is how it appears. We have a habit of buying players that some are average. There's no doubt we've made mistakes. The same as City spent a lot of money in the last couple of years on the Mateus Nunez's and the Calvin Phillips, and they're not good enough. But Man United systematically ruin players. They come in with a lot of hype, a lot of expectation. A lot of people saying, "Wow, look how good they were at their previous club," and they either fade instantly or they start well and they fade and they fall away. And Chelsea are at risk of doing it to these young players if they don't address their mistakes quickly. And that will be the most painful element, is you could have players like Caicedo, Enzo, etc., who never, ever fulfill their potential because a 2 or 3 year stint at Chelsea, the pressures and the memes and the banter and the criticism that comes with it, sometimes you never recover from that pressure because every time you go to a new club or you move on or a new manager comes in, you're always trying too hard to impress or catch up with lost time, and it becomes a problem. And that's what Chelsea have to look at, is bringing in those players who are 25, 26, 27 that you do pin your hopes on, that are a little bit older, a little bit more developed, that can take that pressure. And then your youngsters, there's got to be expectations against these young players, but not the level that people throw at them. Every now and then
the price tag, it matters though. This is the thing. Why do we act like price tag doesn't matter? Price tag matters.
Okay. Of course, a price
if
tag.
If you're a
matters.
£115 million player, you need to be a difference maker. Simple.
No, you don't.
The reason why no one mentions
Declan
Rice's price tag is because he's a difference maker. Has Caicedo been a difference maker?
But
no.
Rice
Has Enzo been a difference maker? No.
Again, let me interject. Rice is a different matter. Rice is older. Okay, so him being older, being more experienced, I expect him to be a difference maker week in, week out. I don't expect 18, 19, 20-year-olds to do it, irrespective of their money. Every now and then, there's an anomaly. Every now and then, there's an Mbappe. Cristiano Ronaldo at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old wasn't a consistent difference maker for Sporting Lisbon or Manchester United or Portugal. He was a good player that scored goals and created, but he was young and he was learning. Most young players still need to be nurtured. Young players, though, top young players with hype have always been expensive. Rooney cost nearly £30 million 20 years ago. That's the equivalent of over £200 million now. Who did he ever, when he came in, he had Ruud van Nistelrooy, Gary Neville, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, elder statesmen to help support him. Young top players have always cost a lot of money. Just there's a lot more money in football now, so everyone's a 70, 80, 90 million pound player. Football hasn't changed, though, at all, in the sense that if you sign 5 18-year-olds, 6 18-year-olds, 4 or 5 20-year-olds, and a couple of 21-year-olds, the likelihood that even just one of them is able to play consistently for 90% of the game, 90% of the season, is ridiculous, because most young players don't do that. They are as rare as rocking horse shit. Declan Rice, 5, 6, 7 years ago, could not do what he's doing at Arsenal because he was younger. So I get your point that money comes with expectations, but Chelsea Football Club are hanging these young players out to dry because they have nobody to orchestrate them, nobody to lead them, nobody to help galvanize them. Or they don't have enough of those type of players.
Whose fault is that then?
That's the club, the way it's been run. There's no doubt about it.
That's why I said he's the main culprit.
The players, I don't think we can be signing 18, 19, 20-year-olds and go, well, because you cost £80 million, you have to be consistent week in, week out. Last year, a commentator, when watching Man United, said, Garnacho, by the way, at this point, had only started 4 games, and said, well, now that he's starting for Man United, he's got to start scoring week in, week out. I thought, I've never heard that labeled against an 18-year-old in my life. But for some reason, we're doing it in the modern day game, and I don't necessarily think that's correct. So I think they're talented players. The club needs to buy experienced men for them to learn from. Otherwise, they're going to burn them, brother. And how do I know this? Man United have burnt so many players in the past because we just haven't had the right environment or the right system or the right squads to nurture them. And that's why we've wasted so much money. It's painful. I mean,
Caicedo said he looked up to Kante. What do Chelsea do the summer they buy Caicedo? They sell Kante. Now, Kante and Jorginho, of course, have regressed. Let's all cut the crap here. Of course, they've regressed. Of course, they're not as amazing as they were the year that Chelsea won the Champions League. We know this. But they still would have been pivotal, experienced pieces in this team had they been here. If Chelsea want to do anything this season, they need to buy 3 30-year-olds this January. They need to buy experienced Premier League veterans who have been there, done that, even if they aren't amazing, even if they're average, even if they can just do an average Premier League role. This is what they need. They need 3 players like that. And this is my thing now, because this goes back what I said at the start of the segment. This is then Todd Bowley's fault. This is why he's the biggest culprit.
No, I agree.
So let's say they sack Poch because Chelsea fans want Poch out. Okay, Pochettino sacked tomorrow. Number 1 question, of course, the prototypical question, who would they bring him? Number 2, does he fix it? Number 3, are we just hitting the reset button on a project that's already failed? In essence, has it not failed?
I don't think it's a reset button. I think it's an adaptation and a slight change. But viewers would love to get your thoughts.